Get out. Man. Officer Desmond Rayburn's voice sliced through the courtroom, dripping with contempt. To him, Mercer wasn't a defendant. He was a target, an opportunity to perform power in front of an audience he considered his. "You think these charges are some kind of joke?" Rayburn sneered, eyes fixed on Mercer like he was examining something beneath his shoe. "I was just sitting in my car, sir," Mercer replied, voice steady despite the weight pressing against his chest. "Right, and I'm Santa Claus," Rayburn laughed, turning to make sure his fellow officers caught his performance. The officers' laughter echoed through the marble chamber. Phones came out. Judge Harlow frowned. Something shifted in the air. Rayburn thought he was showcasing dominance. Instead, he was digging his own professional grave. Because Terrence Mercer wasn't just any defendant, he was a respected neurosurgeon with an impeccable record. And unknown to Rayburn, courthouse security had captured every moment of their earlier encounter on high-definition video. What will happen when that footage contradicts everything in the officer's sworn testimony? How will the judge react when she sees what really happened during that traffic stop? Will Rayburn's laughter still echo when the truth finally speaks? And what price will the officer pay for his performance today? Let's see how justice unfolds in this gripping story of truth revealed. The county courthouse stood like a monument to order and justice, its limestone facade gleaming in the morning sunlight. Inside courtroom 4B, the atmosphere was formal yet tense, with polished wooden benches arranged in neat rows facing the imposing bench where Judge Eleanor Harlow presided. The scent of lemon polish and aged books hung in the air, mingling with the faint aroma of coffee from various travel mugs scattered throughout the gallery. Dr. Terrence Mercer sat at the defendant's table, his posture impeccable despite the gravity pulling at his shoulders. At 47, he carried himself with the quiet dignity that came from years of making life-and-death decisions in operating rooms. His charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, his burgundy tie a deliberate choice, professional without being flashy. His hands, the same hands that had performed delicate brain surgeries on countless patients, were folded calmly before him, betraying none of the turmoil he felt inside. Beside him, his attorney, Vivian Choi, arranged documents with methodical precision. She was known throughout the district as a formidable defense attorney, but even her confidence seemed tested by the unusual circumstances of this case. She occasionally glanced at her client with a reassuring nod, a silent promise that truth would prevail. Dr. Mercer's eyes moved across the courtroom to where Officer Desmond Rayburn sat with his colleagues. The officer's uniform was pressed and proper, his posture relaxed and confident, almost cocky. Unlike Mercer, Rayburn seemed to be enjoying himself, sharing occasional whispers and subtle smirks with fellow officers from the department. At 34, Rayburn had 8 years on the force and a reputation for being tough on crime in certain neighborhoods. The gallery behind them was filled with a cross-section of the community. Several of Dr. Mercer's colleagues from Central Memorial Hospital sat together, their presence a silent testament to his standing. Dr. Naomi Wilson, chief of neurosurgery, had canceled 3 consultations to be here. 2 rows behind them sat Rayburn's supervisor, Captain Herbert Landry, his expression unreadable as he observed the proceedings. Judge Harlow's clerk called the court to order. The room fell silent as the judge entered, her robes flowing behind her as she took her seat behind the bench. Judge Harlow had 22 years on the bench and a reputation for fairness that cut through political lines. Her piercing eyes surveyed the courtroom with the practiced neutrality of someone who had heard every possible story and excuse. The case of State Vibod Mercer was about to begin, and no one, not even Officer Rayburn with his easy smile, could predict how it would unfold. Officer Desmond Rayburn took the stand with the practiced ease of someone who had testified dozens of times before. He settled into the witness chair, adjusting his uniform with deliberate motions, making sure his badge caught the fluorescent courtroom lighting. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Marion Keller, approached with a confident stride. "Officer Rayburn, please tell the court what occurred on the evening of April 17th, she requested, her voice projecting authority and trust. Rayburn leaned slightly toward the microphone. "At approximately 11:43 p.m., I observed a black Lexus sedan driving erratically on Westfield Avenue. The vehicle was swerving between lanes and traveling approximately 15 miles over the posted speed limit." His delivery was smooth, rehearsed, each word carrying the weight of official truth. "What actions did you take?" Keller prompted. "I activated my lights and siren and initiated a traffic stop. The vehicle initially seemed to accelerate before finally pulling over after about half a mile. When I approached the vehicle, I detected the strong odor of alcohol. The driver, Dr. Mercer, had bloodshot eyes and slurred speech patterns consistent with intoxication." From the defense table, Dr. Mercer's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. His attorney made a note without looking up. "How did the defendant respond when you requested a field sobriety test?" continued Keller. Rayburn's expression hardened. He became immediately hostile. He refused to exit the vehicle when instructed, claiming he hadn't been drinking. When I insisted, he eventually complied but continued arguing and behaving erratically. During the walk and turn test, he stumbled multiple times and couldn't maintain his balance. "Did Dr. Mercer complete the breathalyzer test?" "No, ma'am. He refused, citing some medical excuse about equipment accuracy. That's when I placed him under arrest for DUI and resisting an officer." As Rayburn continued his testimony, several officers in the gallery nodded in agreement. One even smirked. Dr. Mercer remained perfectly still, his expression unreadable except for a subtle tightening around his eyes, the only external sign of a man watching his reputation being systematically dismantled by confident, authoritative lies. Defense attorney Vivian Choi approached the witness stand with measured steps, her slim portfolio containing just 3 sheets of paper. "Officer Rayburn, you testified that my client was swerving between lanes. Could you elaborate on what you observed?" "Like I said, the vehicle was moving erratically between lanes without signaling," Rayburn responded, his tone slightly more guarded than during direct examination. "And this occurred on a Westfield Avenue at 11:43 p.m., correct?" "Yes, that's correct." "Officer Rayburn, are you aware that Westfield Avenue was under construction that night with single-lane traffic only?" A barely perceptible pause. "I might have misspoken about the exact location." Judge Harlow looked up from her notes, her attention suddenly sharpened. "Are you changing your testimony, officer?" Choi asked, her voice calm but penetrating. "No, perhaps it was after he turned onto Cedar Road." Choi nodded slowly. "And when my client allegedly refused the breathalyzer, did you inform him that refusal would result in automatic license suspension?" "Of course, standard procedure." "Did you offer him the blood test alternative as required by state law?" Another pause. "I believe so." "You believe so, or you did so?" "I did." Choi approached the bench. "Your Honor, I'd like to introduce Defense Exhibit A, the complete dash camera and body camera footage from Officer Rayburn's vehicle and uniform on the night in question." For the first time, Officer Rayburn's confident demeanor faltered. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face as Judge Harlow nodded her approval, and the courtroom technician prepared the video evidence. The courtroom lights dimmed as the large screen beside the jury box illuminated. The timestamp showed 11:43 p.m. exactly. Dr. Mercer's black Lexus appeared on the screen, driving perfectly within the lane mark, signal blinking properly for each turn. The vehicle's speed, displayed in the corner of the police dash cam, registered consistently at 3 miles below the limit. When the cruiser's lights flashed, Mercer pulled over immediately, not half a mile later, as Rayburn had claimed. The body camera footage showed Dr. Mercer politely handing over his license and registration. His speech was clear, his movements precise, no slurring, no stumbling, no aggression. "I've just finished a 12-hour surgery," Mercer explained on screen. "I haven't had alcohol in months." The courtroom remained deadly silent as the footage played on, systematically dismantling every claim in Rayburn's testimony. The footage continued playing, casting its harsh blue glow across the stunned faces of the courtroom spectators. The video now showed Officer Rayburn ordering Dr. Mercer out of his vehicle, his tone shifting dramatically from the professional demeanor he'd displayed at the beginning of the encounter. Gone was the polite officer, replaced by someone whose voice carried an edge of anticipatory pleasure. "Get out of the car now," Rayburn barked on screen, hand resting casually on his holster. "You people always think you're above the law." Dr. Mercer complied immediately, movement slow and deliberate. "Officer, I'm not resisting. I'm just trying to understand why I've been pulled over when I wasn't speeding or driving erratically." The camera captured Dr. Mercer standing perfectly balanced beside his vehicle, hands visible, posture non-threatening. Judge Harlow leaned forward, her glasses perched on the end of her nose, expression intensifying as she watched Rayburn circle Mercer like a predator. "Spread your legs, hands on the hood," Rayburn commanded. The doctor complied without hesitation. "Officer, I'm Dr. Terrence Mercer, Chief of Neurosurgery at Central Memorial. I'm coming from an emergency craniotomy that lasted nearly 12 hours. I'm exhausted, but certainly not intoxicated. If there's any issue with my driving—" "Save it," Rayburn cut him off. "I know a drunk when I see one. You neurosurgeons think you can do whatever you want? Flash that white coat, and everyone bows down?" The gallery stirred uncomfortably as they watched the officer perform a field sobriety test that Dr. Mercer passed with textbook perfection. Walking the line without wavering, balancing on one foot without difficulty, following the pen light with his eyes in the smooth, accurate movements. "Something's not right with you," Rayburn insisted, frustration evident in his voice. "I'm going to need you to take a breathalyzer." "I'm happy to comply," Dr. Mercer replied calmly, "but I should inform you that I use an alcohol-based mouthwash as part of my pre-surgical protocol. It might register a false positive. A blood test would be more accurate if you're concerned." The courtroom watched as Officer Rayburn's body language changed, his shoulders squaring, his stance widening. "Don't tell me how to do my job, breathalyzer, or you're refusing testing." "I'm not refusing testing, officer. I'm simply requesting the more accurate blood test that I'm entitled to by law." "That's a refusal." Rayburn reached for his handcuffs. "Turn around. You're under arrest for DUI and resisting an officer." Assistant District Attorney Keller had stopped taking notes, her pen frozen above her legal pad as she watched her case disintegrate on screen. Captain Landry's face had hardened into a mask of professional concern, his eyes darting between the video and the back of Rayburn's head. The footage showed Dr. Mercer being handcuffed, still maintaining his composure. "Officer, please listen. I'm not resisting you in any way. I'm simply trying to—" "You know what your problem is?" Rayburn interrupted, tightening the cuffs with unnecessary force that made Dr. Mercer wince visibly. "You think that fancy degree and nice car means something. Where I come from, we call people like you uppity." A collective intake of breath echoed through the courtroom. Judge Harlow's pen stopped moving mid-note. In the gallery, Dr. Wilson closed her eyes briefly, as if the word had physically struck her. The video continued as Officer Rayburn roughly guided Dr. Mercer toward the patrol car. "Let's see how important you feel spending the night in county lockup with the real criminals. Maybe next time you'll remember your place." Throughout the encounter, not once did Dr. Mercer raise his voice or resist. His dignity remained intact even as his rights were being violated. As the video footage ended, the lights came back up gradually. The courtroom remained suspended in stunned silence. Officer Rayburn's earlier easy confidence had evaporated completely, replaced by rigid posture and a thin sheen of sweat on his forehead. Judge Harlow removed her glasses slowly, placing them precisely on her bench. Her voice, when it came, was controlled, but carried an undercurrent of anger that everyone in the room could feel. "Officer Rayburn," she said, "would you care to explain the significant discrepancies between your sworn testimony and the video evidence we've just viewed?" Before he could formulate a response, Judge Harlow continued, "And, perhaps more importantly, would you care to explain your use of racially charged language and excessive force against a cooperative citizen who was exercising his legal rights?" The silence that followed her question seemed to vibrate with tension as all eyes turned toward the officer who, minutes earlier, had been laughing at the defendant's expense. Officer Rayburn shifted uncomfortably in the witness stand, his collar suddenly seeming too tight. The confident smirk that had animated his face throughout the morning had vanished, replaced by a tightness around his eyes that betrayed the first flickers of genuine concern. "Your Honor," he began, clearing his throat, "the video doesn't capture everything. Angles can be deceiving. Dr. Mercer's demeanor changed significantly when the camera wasn't directly on him. There were subtle clues of intoxication that might not be apparent to viewers without proper training." Judge Harlow's expression remained unmoved by this explanation. "Officer Rayburn, I watched continuous footage from both your dashcam and body cam. At what point specifically do you believe Dr. Mercer exhibited these signs of intoxication that somehow evaded both cameras?" "It's in the eyes, Your Honor. The subtle delays in response, things that don't necessarily translate on video." Rayburn's voice had taken on a defensive edge that hadn't been present during his earlier testimony. Assistant District Attorney Keller rose slowly to her feet. "Your Honor, the state requests a brief recess to review this new evidence." "Granted," Judge Harlow replied. "Court will reconvene in 30 minutes. As the judge departed, the courtroom erupted into hushed conversations. Rayburn's fellow officers no longer made eye contact with him as he descended from the witness stand. Captain Landry beckoned him with a grim expression that promised a conversation far removed from the supportive camaraderie of earlier that morning. In the corridor outside, two uniformed officers who had been seated in the gallery spoke in low tones. "Did you know about this?" asked the younger officer. "About what? That Rayburn fabricates charges? Or that he's on camera using racial slurs?" The older officer shook his head. "The department can't survive another scandal like this." Across the hall, Dr. Wilson approached Dr. Mercer and his attorney. "Terrence, I knew something was wrong about these charges, but that footage—" She squeezed his arm gently. "How are you holding up?" Dr. Mercer straightened his tie, a gesture that seemed to help him maintain composure. "I'm just grateful for the cameras, Naomi. Without them, it would be my word against his." When court reconvened, ADA Keller approached the bench with visible reluctance. Captain Landry had taken a seat directly behind Officer Rayburn, whose formerly relaxed posture had transformed into rigid attentiveness. The gallery had grown by several people, including two individuals taking notes who were later identified as reporters from the local newspaper. Judge Harlow surveyed the room with deliberate slowness before addressing Keller. "Counsel, is the state prepared to proceed?" "Your Honor," Keller began, her voice noticeably lacking its earlier confidence. "In light of the video evidence presented, the state moves to dismiss all charges against Dr. Mercer." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Dr. Mercer closed his eyes briefly, the tension of months visibly draining from his shoulders. "Motion granted," Judge Harlow replied without hesitation. "Dr. Mercer, you are free to go. The court apologizes for the ordeal you've endured." She turned her attention to Officer Rayburn, who sat rigidly at the prosecution table. "Officer Rayburn, remain in this courtroom after adjournment. We have serious matters to discuss regarding your testimony." As the gallery began to stir, Judge Harlow raised her voice slightly. "Before we conclude, I want to address several disturbing elements observed in the evidence today." The room stilled immediately. "What I witnessed was not a misunderstanding or a procedural error," she continued, her tone measured but unyielding. "I saw a deliberate abuse of authority. I saw fabricated charges. I saw racial bias influencing law enforcement decisions, and perhaps most troublingly, I saw perjury committed in my courtroom." Officer Rayburn stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Behind him, Captain Landry's expression had darkened into something approaching fury. "This court will be referring this matter to the district attorney's office for review and potential criminal charges against Officer Rayburn. Additionally, I am ordering a copy of today's proceedings and evidence be sent to the police commissioner and the Office of Professional Responsibility." She leaned forward slightly. "The justice system functions only when those sworn to uphold the law do so with integrity. Without that foundation, public trust erodes, and the entire structure becomes compromised." As Judge Harlow formally adjourned the proceedings, the courtroom burst into activity. Dr. Mercer turned to embrace his attorney while colleagues approached with congratulations and expressions of outrage on his behalf. Reporters hurried from the room, already composing headlines in their minds. Officer Rayburn remained seated as instructed, isolated now even as other officers filed past him without acknowledgement. Captain Landry leaned forward to whisper something in his ear that caused the color to drain from Rayburn's face. In the corridor outside, Dr. Mercer faced a small gathering of press. A reporter thrust a microphone toward him. "Dr. Mercer, how do you feel about the outcome today?" He straightened his shoulders before responding, relieved but not satisfied. "What happened to me happens to countless others without cameras present, without the resources for adequate defense, without professional standing to lend credibility to their word. Until that changes, justice remains incomplete." As cameras flashed around him, Dr. Mercer's gaze drifted back toward the courtroom doors, where uniformed officers were now gathering in tense conversation, their world shifting beneath their feet in ways they hadn't anticipated when the day began. The police commission hearing room was considerably less ornate than Judge Harlow's courtroom, but the gravity hanging in the air felt even heavier. 2 weeks had passed since the courtroom revelation, and now 7 stern-faced commissioners sat behind a curved table, reviewing documents as the room filled with observers, reporters, and concerned citizens. Officer Rayburn sat alone at a small table facing the commission. His uniform had been replaced by a somber suit that seemed to hang awkwardly on his frame, as though he'd lost weight in the intervening days. The confident posture that had defined him was gone, replaced by the slumped shoulders of a man watching his career disintegrate. Commissioner Elaine Washington, a former prosecutor with 27 years of experience, called the hearing to order. "This commission has reviewed the evidence from State v. Mercer, including the complete video footage and Officer Rayburn's sworn testimony. We've also examined Officer Rayburn's service record, including previously filed complaints that were dismissed for lack of evidence." The commissioner paused, fixing Rayburn with a penetrating gaze. "Officer Rayburn, would you like to make a statement before this commission renders its decision?" Rayburn stood slowly. "Commissioners, I acknowledge that mistakes were made during the traffic stop involving Dr. Mercer. My recollection of events differed from what was captured on camera. I was working a double shift that night and—" "Officer," Commissioner Washington interrupted, "are you characterizing perjury and racial profiling as mistakes?" The room fell silent. Rayburn's mouth opened, then closed without sound. "This commission views your actions not as errors in judgment, but as fundamental breaches of public trust," Commissioner Washington continued. "We have found substantial evidence of misconduct, including racially biased policing, excessive force, false arrest, and providing false testimony under oath." She lifted a document from the table. "By unanimous decision, this commission recommends immediate termination of your employment with the department. Furthermore, we are recommending that the district attorney proceed with criminal charges for perjury and civil rights violations. Whispers rippled through the audience. In the back row, Dr. Mercer sat beside his attorney, his expression solemn rather than triumphant. Commissioner Washington addressed the room at large. "Let this case serve as notice that cameras don't create bad behavior. They expose it. This department will not shield officers who violate their oath and the public's trust." As the hearing concluded, reporters surrounded Dr. Mercer, who had become a reluctant symbol in the ongoing conversation about police accountability. Across the room, Rayburn exited alone through a side door, no longer part of the brotherhood that had once surrounded him with protective camaraderie. 6 months after the courthouse revelation, Dr. Mercer stood at a podium in City Hall's main chamber, adjusting the microphone as flashbulbs illuminated his face. The room was packed with community members, city officials, and media representatives gathered for the public launch of the Police Accountability Initiative. What happened in that courtroom was a single moment of justice in a system that still permits too many injustices, Dr. Mercer began, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had served him well in operating rooms and now in advocacy. Today, we take a step toward addressing the root causes rather than just celebrating one corrected wrong. Seated behind him were Judge Harlow, newly appointed Police Commissioner Landry, promoted after his predecessor's resignation amid the scandal, and various community leaders who had joined forces to draft the comprehensive reform proposal now before the City Council. The initiative outlined mandatory body cameras with automatic upload protocols, civilian oversight boards with real enforcement power, and implicit bias training with measurable outcomes. Most significantly, it established criminal penalties for officers who disabled recording equipment or falsified reports. "This isn't anti-police legislation," Dr. Mercer continued. "It's pro-justice. The best officers, those serving with integrity, have nothing to fear from transparency and accountability." Commissioner Landry nodded solemnly from his seat. The department's internal investigation had uncovered 17 previous complaints against Rayburn with disturbing similarities to Dr. Mercer's experience. 5 officers had been suspended, 3 had resigned, and departmental policies had undergone significant revision. Meanwhile, the district attorney's office had charged Desmond Rayburn with multiple counts of official misconduct, perjury, falsifying governmental records, and deprivation of civil rights under color of law. His trial was scheduled for the following month, with Judge Harlow having recused herself for obvious reasons. Following Dr. Mercer's presentation, Councilwoman Diaz approached the microphone. "I move that the City Council adopt the Police Accountability Initiative as presented," she announced firmly. The vote that followed wasn't unanimous, but the majority was substantial enough to pass the measure. As the session concluded, a young black man approached Dr. Mercer somewhat hesitantly. "Dr. Mercer, my name is Marcus Johnson. I was arrested by Officer Rayburn last year. No one believed me when I said what happened." His voice wavered slightly. "Watching that video in court, it was like seeing my own experience. Thank you for not letting it go." Dr. Mercer gripped the young man's shoulder. "Would you be willing to share your story with the Independent Review Board? There are likely others." Johnson nodded firmly. "Yes, sir. It's time." Outside City Hall, former Officer Rayburn watched the proceedings from his parked car, a newspaper with his own photograph on the front page lying on the passenger seat. The headline read, "Former Officer Faces Multiple Charges as Police Reform Takes Center Stage." His phone buzzed with a text from his attorney. "Plea offer received. Call me." 1 year to the day after the courtroom revelation, Desmond D. Rayburn stood before Judge Marcus Chen as the verdict was delivered. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing recommendation included 30 months in federal prison for civil rights violations and perjury. As Rayburn was led away in handcuffs, experiencing the same loss of freedom he had so casually imposed on others, the courtroom remained somber. There were no celebrations, no triumphant outbursts. Justice wasn't about revenge, it was about restoration and prevention. Dr. Mercer had chosen not to attend the sentencing. Instead, he was at Central Memorial Hospital, performing a delicate procedure on a 16-year-old car accident victim. In the observation gallery, 2 medical students watched with rapt attention. One of them, Marcus Johnson, who had been inspired to pursue medicine after working with Dr. Mercer on the Accountability Initiative. Across town, Captain Landry, now Commissioner Landry, addressed the newest class of Police Academy graduates. "Your badge is not power," he told them, his expression grave. "It's responsibility. The cameras on your uniforms aren't there to catch you making mistakes. They're there to protect the truth, whatever that truth may be." The department had changed. The city had changed. Not perfectly, not completely, but meaningfully. Complaints against officers had decreased by 38%. Civilian oversight had teeth. Body cameras were non-negotiable. Dr. Mercer still got pulled over occasionally, but now, when officers approached his window and recognized him, the interaction was different, tinged with respect rather than suspicion. One officer had even thanked him. "You made us better," she said simply, and that, ultimately, was the only victory that mattered.